A billionaire tech CEO in Silicon Valley announced his company's quarterly results in flawless English and then without hesitation switched into Tamil to call his mother in Chennai. A British politician gave a passionate speech on national identity while wearing a sari that had been gifted to her by her Indian constituents. Meanwhile, in a boardroom in Dubai, a business deal worth millions was sealed with a handshake and the words, "Namaste, my friend." You might think these are random moments, but what if I told you they weren't? What if I told you that this is deliberate strategy? And here's the part that will truly surprise you. There are 9 countries around the globe that aren't merely hosting Indians. They are in subtle yet powerful ways claiming them as their own. Not through coercion, not through direct politics, but through something far deeper. By the time you've gone through this, you'll realize why some experts believe this could redefine the very idea of nationality. Just last week, the Prime Minister of a small island nation stood before the United Nations and proclaimed that his country's most valuable export wasn't sugar, wasn't tourism, but the Indian spirit flowing through his people's veins. The room fell quiet. Diplomats shuffled uncomfortably, and India's representative at the session, he simply smiled. What's unfolding is not about immigration numbers or cultural presence alone. It's about a global phenomenon so unusual that political scientists are still debating how to describe it. These are countries looking at their Indian origin populations and saying, "You aren't outsiders here, you are us." The numbers alone will overwhelm you. Across these 9 countries, more than 32 million people of Indian origin live and thrive. But here's the catch. Many of them are no longer seen as Indians by their adopted nations. They are seen as locals, natives, integral parts of the social fabric. When people think of America absorbing Indians, they often picture billionaire CEOs and Fortune 500 leaders. Sundar Pichai heads Google. Satya Nadella steers Microsoft. Shantanu Narayan controls Adobe. But this is just scratching the surface. Here's what rarely gets discussed. In specific neighborhoods of Silicon Valley, Indian festivals have become de facto public holidays. Officially, they aren't on the calendar. But try asking a major tech firm to keep running at full strength during Diwali. Entire systems slow down. Stroll through Fremont, California, and you'll see second and third generation Indian Americans speaking fluent Gujarati or Tamil with their grandparents' families that arrived decades ago. The US immigration system itself has something unusual called the National Interest Waiver. Now guess who benefits disproportionately from it? Indians. The American government has essentially created a route that says, "Why need you so much that will flex our rules?" In just the past year, more than 200,000 Indians secured some form of permanent residency. That isn't just immigration, that's absorption. America isn't merely welcoming Indians, it's intentionally gathering them. Britain once spent 2 centuries ruling India, extracting resources, wealth, and human labor. Fast forward to the present, and Britain is now engaged in something their colonial ancestors could never have imagined. They are embracing Indians as British. Rishi Sunak rose to become Prime Minister. Priti Patel shaped immigration policy. Sajid Javid held the Treasury. But go beneath the headlines. Walk into a British classroom today and you may see Indian history presented as British history. The 1857 rebellion is no longer described only as a mutiny. It's now called the First War of Indian Independence in textbooks. The British Museum's most visited galleries. Indian artifacts now presented as shared cultural heritage. Curry is no longer a foreign import in Britain. It has been declared a national dish. When a nation that once considered Indian spices exotic now claims Indian cuisine as central to its identity, you know a major shift has occurred. If these revelations are striking, the next will push you further. Because the story of the UAE rewrites how we imagine the Middle East. In the United Arab Emirates, Indians don't simply form a minority. They are in many ways the population itself. Nearly 1 in 3 people living there has Indian roots. That's not marginal, that's demographic centrality. The UAE has gone so far as to establish specific systems to accommodate them. Legal frameworks for family matters, education curricula built around Indian models, business practices modeled on Indian norms. In many respects, it has constructed a parallel India inside its borders. Dubai's Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid once said openly that Indians are not guests but partners in nation building. That's not just polite phrasing. That's a statement of ownership. Laws now allow Indians to purchase property, run companies, and educate their children in their languages with greater ease than in some Indian states themselves. The UAE isn't passively hosting Indians. It's actively competing with India to attract and keep them. Saudi Arabia's engagement with Indians transcends trade and enters sacred territory. For countless Indian Muslims, Saudi Arabia is not simply another country, it is the spiritual center of their world. In recognition of this, Saudi Arabia created visa categories tailored for Indian pilgrims, not just for Hajj but for year-round religious journeys. Whole urban areas have been designed with Indian religious practices in mind. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman recently made a comment that sent ripples across diplomatic communities. He said, "Indian Muslims visiting holy sites weren't foreigners, they were returning home." For a future king to describe Indians in such a way goes far beyond hospitality. It suggests adoption. Canada, on the other hand, has woven Indian integration into its very brand. Diversity is our strength isn't just a slogan there. It is the nation's guiding principle, and Indians sit at the heart of that design. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau doesn't just visit India. He has been seen performing Bollywood dances while dressed in traditional Indian clothes. When the leader of a G7 nation showcases your culture so publicly, it's not just appreciation. It's an act of claiming. Canada's immigration policy itself seems designed with Indians in mind. The Express Entry program rewards English skills, education and work experience, areas where Indians excel globally. Cities like Brampton and Surrey now see Canadian-born politicians giving speeches in Punjabi, vowing to protect Sikh religious freedoms and treating Indian festivals as Canadian traditions. Canada hasn't only welcomed Indians, it has reshaped its national identity around their presence. South Africa's ties with Indians run deep, complex, and transformative. Indians were brought there as indentured workers under British control, then subjected to apartheid-era discrimination. Yet they endured, adapted, and became a permanent part of the nation's soul. Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy of satyagraha, non-violent resistance, was not born in India but in South Africa, where he fought injustices as a young lawyer. Today, when South Africans celebrate Gandhi, they don't see him as an external leader, but as a revolutionary formed on their land. The South African government has even declared Indians a founding community, not a minority group. That kind of terminology is extraordinary. When a nation calls you a founder instead of a migrant, it transforms your place in its story. Fiji is another striking example. Nearly 40% of its people are of Indian ancestry. When the British first brought Indians as labourers in the 1870s, they were never meant to stay. They weren't supposed to form communities, build lives, or shape the nation. Yet, they did. Today, Indo-Fijians don't simply reside in Fiji. They define it. Diwali is celebrated as a national holiday. Hindi has been given the status of an official language. Turn on a Fijian radio and you may hear Indian classical music. While political tensions have sometimes emerged between ethnic Fijians and Indo-Fijians, culturally they have fused into a shared identity. Fiji's tourism industry even promotes itself using Indian dance, Indian flavors, and Indian warmth. What they are selling to the world is India, but branded as Fiji. If there is one nation that demonstrates complete absorption of Indian heritage, it is Mauritius. Over 65% of its people can trace their ancestry back to India. Yet they don't call themselves Indians in Mauritius. They proudly identify as Mauritians with Indian souls. This island has accomplished something unique, merging Indian traditions into its national identity without losing its own distinct character. In Mauritius, Indian languages echo in parliament. Public temples honor Indian deities. Indian festivals mark the national calendar, and yet the identity remains proudly Mauritian. The Prime Minister once said words that echoed across both lands. Mauritius is not India's colony. India is our motherland. That is not diplomatic politeness. That is emotional ownership. In Trinidad and Tobago, a cultural fusion bordering on magic has unfolded. Indian traditions have not only survived the passage of time, they have thrived and blended into the Caribbean identity. Indian food is eaten as local food. Indian music pulses through the streets during festivals, and Indian religious practices are celebrated openly. Over generations, Indian culture has become so intertwined with the national fabric that to outsiders, it feels inseparable from the identity of the islands themselves. Here too, the story is not one of migration alone. It is the tale of cultural claiming, where what was once foreign is now indigenous. It has transformed into something uniquely Caribbean while still remaining unmistakably Indian. Listen to chutney music, and you'll catch Indian classical melodies layered with Caribbean rhythms. Taste the food and you'll find curries hotter than anything in Delhi, served alongside rotis softer than anything in Mumbai. Watch Carnival and you'll witness Indian dancers moving in sync with steel drum bands. Trinidadians of Indian origin don't feel trapped between two identities. They've forged a third culture that is at once Indian and Caribbean. Former Prime Minister Kamla Persad Bissessa once said, "We are not Indians in Trinidad, we are Trinidadian Indians, and that makes us something the world has never seen before." That's not confusion of identity. That's innovation of identity. Looking across all 9 countries, a distinct pattern emerges. It's something rarely spoken of openly, but quietly acknowledged everywhere. These nations aren't claiming Indians randomly. They are carefully, even strategically claiming them because Indians bring qualities that modern societies hunger for: education, entrepreneurship, cultural richness, and global networks. Every one of these countries has gained immensely from its Indian community. The UAE's economy thrives on Indian investment and labor. Britain's National Health Service is fueled by Indian doctors. America's technology sector runs on Indian innovation. Canada's immigration strategy is sustained by Indian applicants. Consider numbers most governments would prefer to keep hidden. The global Indian diaspora sends more than 100 billion back to India each year. But here's what's even more astonishing. They spend almost 3 times that amount in the countries they now call home. The UAE's economy would collapse without the spending power of Indians. British curry houses now employ more workers than the steel industry. American tech stocks swing depending on approvals of Indian H-1B visas. These nations are not simply embracing Indians socially or culturally. They are anchoring their economies to them. Yet here's the twist many overlook. India is claiming them back through initiatives like the Overseas Citizen of India card, specialized NRI investment schemes, and global cultural programs. India is essentially saying, you may live abroad, but you still belong here. What we're watching is nothing less than a global tug, a war for Indian loyalty, and the stakes are monumental. Political thinkers are whispering about something radical, that we may be seeing the emergence of the world's first truly global ethnicity. Indians across 9 countries, speaking dozens of languages, practicing multiple faiths, yet staying culturally tied in a way that transcends geography. Children of Indian families in Canada are learning Bharatanatyam. Grandchildren of Indians in Mauritius are studying Sanskrit. 3rd-generation Indo-Trinidadians are making pilgrimages to Indian temples. This isn't cultural dilution, it's cultural multiplication. Each generation is layering new influences while staying connected to an ancient root. Now comes a revelation that connects everything. We aren't looking at 9 disconnected Indian diasporas. What we're witnessing are 9 expressions of one vast global Indian civilization. These countries are not claiming different groups of Indians. They are each claiming a piece of the same multifaceted Indian identity. America claims Indian innovation. Britain embraces Indian intellect. The UAE celebrates Indian entrepreneurship. Saudi Arabia highlights Indian spirituality. Canada praises Indian multiculturalism. South Africa honors Indian resilience. Fiji values Indian adaptability. Mauritius nurtures Indian fusion. Trinidad uplifts Indian creativity. Together they form the complete picture of what India represents to the modern world. But here's the final twist that leaves you breathless. India itself has started to claim these nations in return, not through hard politics or economic dominance, but through cultural gravity. Watch Indian films today and you'll find stories set in Canada, the UK, and the US. Listen to modern Indian music, and you'll hear echoes of Caribbean beats and Middle Eastern tones. Step into an Indian restaurant, and you'll taste dishes that fuse flavors from Africa, Europe, and Asia into something that could exist nowhere else. The shocking truth is not simply that 9 nations are claiming Indians. The greater revelation is that Indians, through sheer cultural momentum, have embedded themselves into these societies so thoroughly that extracting them would leave those nations fundamentally altered. This is colonization turned on its head, not colonization by force, but by integration so complete that the host nations cannot function without their Indian communities. Think about it. The British spent 2 centuries trying to make Indians British. Today, Indians have made Britain partly Indian, and Britain welcomes it. The United States once restricted Indian immigration heavily. Now it competes globally to attract Indian talent, its economy hinging on their contributions. The UAE was once a cluster of desert trading towns. Today it's a global powerhouse powered by Indian energy, ambition and money. These 9 countries aren't passively accepting Indians. They are actively competing with each other to win their loyalty. Canada promises smoother immigration than the US. The UAE offers business freedom Britain cannot match. Mauritius offers cultural preservation even India sometimes struggles with. Each of these countries is not just hosting Indians. They are bidding for them. And Indians in turn are choosing their allegiance based on opportunity, respect, and cultural acceptance. What has emerged is unprecedented, a global auction for talent, identity, and loyalty with Indians as the prize that everyone wants. This phenomenon forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. If Indians can belong to 9 different nations while still holding on to their Indian identity, then what does nationality even mean anymore? If someone can be fully Canadian, proudly Indian, and entirely global all at once, how do we define citizenship? Some experts suggest this is the dawn of post-national identity. Others argue we're circling back to older forms of belonging based on shared culture rather than political borders. But what's happening with Indians is unique. They've managed to preserve their cultural roots while integrating fully into their adopted homelands. They haven't completely assimilated, nor have they remained isolated. They've pioneered something new: cultural ambassadorship. They show what it means to be loyal to your host country while cherishing your heritage. They embody how to be global without being rootless, how to be multicultural without conflict. And here lies the deeper revelation. These 9 nations aren't embracing Indians solely because of their professional achievements. They are embracing them because Indians have cracked the code of modern identity. They've proven that identity doesn't need to be singular. Belonging doesn't need to be exclusive. Loyalty can be both deep and wide. Indians have shown that it is possible to respect one's past while building a global future. As we look to the years ahead, this trend is only accelerating. More nations are actively shaping policies to attract Indians. More Indians are making the choice to spread across continents. More cultures are adjusting to welcome Indian ways of life. What we're observing isn't simply 9 countries claiming Indians. It's the formation of a new kind of human community that transcends borders, but holds tight to cultural roots. Children being raised in these environments will be the first generation in human history to grow up truly global while remaining authentically grounded. They will speak several languages naturally, celebrate festivals spanning continents, and see home not as one location, but as a shared global concept. This is bigger than migration or economics. It's the birth of a new model of identity that could reshape human society in the coming decades. The 9 nations embracing Indians aren't just making cultural statements. They are making bets on the direction of civilization itself. And if the evidence so far is any guide, those bets are paying off handsomely. So the next time you see an Indian excelling in Silicon Valley, governing in London, creating in Dubai, or innovating in Toronto, remember, you're not just witnessing personal success stories. You're seeing the blueprint of the future of human belonging being written right in front of your eyes. And that future looks profoundly Indian, profoundly global, and profoundly optimistic.